Call to order this workshop, workshop, June 25th, 2025. Maybe get a roll call.
Mayor Lutz,
Here.
Council President McDougall,
Here.
Councilor Ross,
Present.
Councilor Predin,
I'm here.
Councilor Pellerin.
Here.
And for the Board of Commissioners, I'll just acknowledge Commissioner Tank, Commissioner Dare, and myself are happy to be joining you this evening.
Right, thank you. And we also have County Administrator here alongside Jordan. Hopefully they didn't dress exactly alike, so.
You coordinate.
Listen to the ending. All right, well, welcome everybody. Thank you for making the long drive up here. We really appreciate these meetings with our county partners. So we're going to start off. We got a lot of things on our agenda. So we're just going to start off with our urban growth boundary status update. And Scott Whitford, development's going to handle that for us. Thank you.
Mayor, and good evening to commissioners. Good to see you all. So I just wanted to give you an update on what's been going on with the I think the last time we spoke was maybe back in January, December, somewhere in that time frame. So a lot has occurred since then. We haven't got it complete yet, but we're still in the process and we're making some headway. We're about a year and 3 months into the process now, and have extensive meetings with our UGD steering committee that we formed, meeting with planning commission and council, as well as extensive public outreach to the community with open houses and direct mailers and the newspaper articles, announcements. We've had several meetings with some of the homeowners associations out in the county in the study area. So I think the last time we spoke, maybe we were looking at the larger study area, the study area being the whole area around the existing community, if I recall correctly. So we have since reduced that down to what we call concept A and concept B. So we're no longer looking at the kind of larger study area. We have concept A that will go up on the screen. So we're still in the process as we try to determine exactly what the preferred UGD alternative is. And that's determined either for the plan that we actually will take through the land use process once we figure that out. Just for a little background and refresher, we are looking for about 250 acres of land. And of that 250 acres, about 130 or so acres will be residential. 53 acres will be employment lands, 19 acres of parks, and 15 acres school site. And so, through these processes, we've kind of narrowed it down to a concept A and concept B. Just to orient you a little bit, you can see sort of the cross hatching there. The value of cross hatching, that's kind of the airport. It includes the airport as well as the runway protection zone, so it's a little bigger than the actual airport. You can see the cross hatching to the east, which is the Union Ford general alignments with right-bearing area. And then down to the southern part of that, it's going through west and the White Shoes Creek drainage. And then the existing gray area in the middle is the existing city boundaries. And so we're calling this concept A that incorporates lands basically to the east here. It also goes all the way as far as south as portions of Highway 126. And on the north side ends at Park and Meadows. Parkway Drive. And so this is just a concept. It's not set in stone. It's something that we took based on the feedback and included it with all of our meetings as a discussion point to try to say, hey, did we hit the mark? So it's still open to change. And we also at the same time have a concept that includes concept B includes some of the same lands in addition to what we're calling the MMV property, which is the stands for the Mackenzie Meadows Village parcel. When we did our scoring of parcels for the potential inclusion, utilizing the review criteria, the objective review criteria, which talks about ease of access, ease of provision of utilities to the properties. The ease of the ability to accommodate the GB. That NMB property actually scored pretty well on some of our analyses. So the council and the state committee and the planning commission set a time back in our last round of meetings in the spring to kind of keep that on the line of the possibility, knowing that it was still subject to a rezone approval to the county, because the existing zoning would force to make it a priority 3 level. And so we had plenty of priority 1 lands, and we would not need to go look at priority 3 lands unless we were to make the finding that we've exhausted all the priority 1 lands and we would go to the 2 lands. So it's been kept as a possibility, kind of pending the outcome of the county's process, and we're going to have another round of meetings this summer. Or this summer, but next meeting will be in late July. The planning commission will meet on August 21st, and then we'll tentatively have the council meet on September 21st and kind of say, do you want to continue to keep this concept being alive pending the outcome of that rezone, or do you want to go forward with some form of concept A, and what is that concept, and what is the exact boundaries? And we're hoping that this next round of meetings will kind of solidify what that boundary is. So, and then after we get consensus on the preferred alternative, the next step would be to enter a formal land use process, which would be our county's plan amendment that we would also concurrently process through the county, and then pending that approval, then we would head into an area planning process, which would kind of give some more detail in terms of where those employment lands would fall on those land on that extended area where essential would go, general road corridors, utility access, character development, policies that you want to put into place for future code. And then we also noted that we need to update our compensation here. There's been interest by the council, some requirements for affordable housing. That's on the way as well. So that's kind of the update that I had for you at this point. During the ad. Okay, open for questions.
So in the property.
58, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you turn on your microphone? Thank you.
Thank you. Scott, commissioners may not all be aware that our county hearings officer just yesterday recommended approval of that land zone change, and given its quasi judicial, we'll discuss them in detail. And just like this afternoon, we have scheduled that for a public hearing before the Board of County Commissioners on Wednesday, August 6th.
You might start off with this, but is there a defined expansion numbers like you're looking for expanding increase rate?
Yeah,
You might have started right off with that, but now.
yeah, the land need analysis came in about sort of 15. Yeah.
That on, Gary? Is our microphone on?
When you hold it.
Hold it for,
the.
thank you.
And within that 250 acres, give us the breakdown of residential and flooded properties.
Sure. Yeah, 134 acres of residential, 53 acres of employment land, 19 acres of parks, and 15 acres for a elementary school site.
The talk about the ability for that matter village. Means that's up for consideration. Did you review what the zoning was like for the other portions?
For the
other
portions.
properties under
Sure. Yeah, the other portion, the zoning that the existing zoning for the Kensington Meadows parcels is forced to propose to be rezoned to mixed use agricultural MUA, I believe 10, I think is which would take it out of what we call resource, was generally considered resource land, and was slotted as potential part of the wetlands. The lands and concept A are all zoned R2 now. Rural residential.
So, as this process moves forward, do we expect, either concept A or concept B to be the ultimate thing that's proposed forward, or could it be a mix and match? Of properties that are in A and B ultimately?
Yeah, I mean, we're looking for obviously one concept, one preferred alternative, but it could be a mix and match.
Whatever gets you 250 acres, that makes sense.
And we're considered priority wetlands.
Any other questions or comments? Mhm. Thank you for that, Scott.
Cool.
All right, next we have houselessness meeting updates. Very Foster assistant sitting here. This is fresh.
This is just off the meeting last night, so we have been for the past year since April of actually 2024, meeting with a community partner group, agency group monthly to address houselessness and how we can mitigate that within our community. So we started with a community conversation last October where we went to the community and asked what they were their concerns, what did they think we should do, and then we pulled that information together with this partnership group and spent quite a few months working through to develop an action plan for the community. We have 4 categories, priorities that came out of that action plan. 1 being support and services, to aid with support services, B, safety and risk mitigation, C, housing, transitional to affordable, and D, information and education. So what we did last night was we pulled together a second community conversation about houselessness, and we brought the action plan to the community, and they sat at a table, so that had about 115 people come, and they discussed with our, what we call our facilitators, which is actually our partner, the people in our partner group, and we discussed all of those priorities for about 90 minutes, and received a ton of feedback, a ton of comment cards, and we will pull together that information and bring it back to our working group, probably by, in rough form, in early August and out to the public, probably by late August, early September. And we find that action plan and keep moving forward with a lot of different pieces. There's a lot of different pieces to our houseless, and we will continue to work towards improving the situation. So I think that Commissioner Chang and Commissioner did work there last night. So happy to answer questions about our process and what we got.
Mean. And there, I'd say I was so impressed with both the tone and the depth and quality of the discussion. Community. There are many discussions about homelessness going on in other parts of the county that are not as simple and thoughtful, proactive, and solution oriented as that conversation was. So, well, I'll say thanks to the city for being part of facilitating those conversations and the community for engaging in such a meeting.
And I did want to note that issues of behavioral health, issues of county sheriff are all part of this partnership group, and now there's 13 different organizations that are part of this group, and there's 18 different people that show up month after month. I did not have to wrangle anybody, and it's been shocking to me how easy it has been to get people to work on this topic. This is just.
I'd like to note that, and you already know, and I just kind of wanted to tell the group was, the first community meeting we had was in October of last year, the new elementary school, and then this one last night was over here with Sisters Park and Rec. And a good many of the people that showed up of the 115 weren't at the first meeting. This was kind of the first time that they were tackling this subject. And I had a group of 5 or 6 people, all from the same neighborhood, who were kind of ready to pounce a little bit about it and kind of, they started off with, very grimacy type faces, and by the end of the thing, there was a couple of them that say, I want to volunteer. I mean, they went from, being a little salty about it and then being very engaging and wanted to be part of the solution. And I think that conversation was probably, we got it across the room.
Anyway,
And so you're crunching all the
Yeah.
info that the input that you collected, when do you think that you'll have some summaries?
so we should bring the rough information to the partner group, we're gonna be in early August. And then, from that, they'll do some refinement of the action plan and we'll reintroduce, and that action plan will be working its way, constantly changing. That's part of it, as everybody knows. When you're working through things, you get them done, you check them off, and you start working on long-term things. And then out to the community, kind of a summary of the comments and the concerns and the things that we're hearing. Hoping to get up by the end of August or early September. We have a webpage on our city website that can get you there and have all of our information from our first meeting there, and some of your report from the first meeting there. And then the action plan is up right now as well, so you can take a look at that and decide, the things that you're seeing. If not, please reach out and happy to answer any questions that you have as well.
One other comment I would make, just a comment, not a question, but there, month and a half ago, there was a great deal of concern across the county about where people would go when they were turned out from China Neck Road, so that they have a new fuels reduction project being. That there was significant concern that a lot of people were in our sisters area and so talk to law enforcement officers, service providers, just people who go with, walk their bike or walk their dog or do other things before us to. Most of the people I spoke to said that they did not see a really noticeable or significant increase in gangs in connection with the China closure. That was, very interesting because there were a lot of people who were moved out there, and I'm not sure if we know yet where they've all gone. There's certainly a lot of them who go out to another place. But it was good to know that not a huge number. So
But the news story said that the waiting time had doubled from the prior year.
So, yes, and not, I think, actually it might be close to that. So for sisters, it was bigger. And what I've heard over the course of time, particularly from the people that are out counting, was that they feel like this year they got a very accurate count. And that years past, they really had weather related. I know 2024 count was in an ice storm, snowstorm kind of area. So I think that, yes, those numbers can say double. And then when you have providers saying, we think this is a really accurate count, that's actually, I think, good news for us to really know.
Yeah, what's the truth?
And then I think that the state of Sean getting data, it numbers came out with houseless children in our area. And actually, I've said gone down quite a bit, which is great. We are just at about 1% when going better, and it's over 33.5% of their school age children in the power home. So I know I talked to Herschel last night about that, and he was really happy, and we were kind of talking about the why, what that looks like, and so that's been very good just to hear at least that piece have a big story.
I know, because I know the story, somebody in Dirt World, this little boy has been there for 9 years. 9 years, and I'm just like, oh, please, and the service providers say, well, yeah, there's a problem, but, I'm gonna get to the root and get that little boy out of there somehow. So I just think that is such a tragedy. So that's good news.
Those numbers, yeah, those numbers since I started doing that. Thank you.
Thank you, Barry. Next up, we have our Wildfire Resiliency update with City Manager Jordan Before.
Yeah, I'm happy to take the lead on this, and councilors feel free to jump in. I will say thank you to Carrie for the meeting last night, acknowledged all of her work. You know, the city's kind of taken on the convener aspect of that, of the houselessness conversations, but it is a community effort. This is a community action plan. And I mean, the progress we've made in a couple of years, I think should be applauded in terms of not just not our role, but the community's role in stepping up and being part of these conversations, the partnerships that we have here, the open nonprofits and the different agencies that show up in every meeting, 18 people every month in a room talking about this. And I think that is reflected in, you know, people are prepared and thinking about having view closure, but we have boots on the ground out there. We can trash, doing behavioral health services, U.S. Forest Service has, you know, a liaison out there. I think people know that in Deschutes County, that, you know, you're going to be touched. People are going to come in and ask if you need help. You're going to, you know, be asked to clean, move on if there's issues and things like that. So, and hearing the successes last night too, it's pretty great to hear from folks like CORE that are out there and getting 4 hours or kind of back with family like that. So it's a work in progress. The action plan is ongoing. We're already, you know, working on a lot of that stuff right now. So thanks again to the commissioners for attending that last night. Okay, wildfire. I don't know if the governor signed it, but Senate Bill 83 has been signed or has been passed by the Senate and House now. So that's a repeal of the wildfire map. The more important news, I think, first, we actually have defensible space standards for new development in place. So this was things that we've been talking about with, you know, in terms of new development, landscaping, no vegetation within 5 feet of building. You know, we have a prohibited tree and plant list now where those species can't be anywhere within 30 feet of a building, no flammable materials within 5 feet. So this is taking best practices from IBHS, from lessons learned from places like Ashland, which I think is the only other model in the state. And correct me if I'm wrong, this is the most strict or stringent defensible space code in the state of Oregon. So I think, you know, council should be proud about that. The fact that they're, you know, taking the leadership despite what was going on with the wildfire hazard maps and Senate Bill 83, that, you know, they took it upon themselves to recognize that we're in a fire, you know, prone, fire adapted area. And it's important that we have these development standards in place as we work to grow and develop in new places. So that's step one, right? So, you know, that took what, 5, 6, 7 meetings to get through that, right? And councilors even rolled up their sleeves and were getting into the details about, you know, trees over a certain DBH that maybe could be allowed with the fire code officials' approval, and, you know, what species shouldn't be allowed, and clusters of plants and things like that. It will be a visual change for the community. I think that's something that we will probably see and hear as new developments have to implement this, you know, and present us with the fire prevention and control plans, have that reviewed by the fire departments, but it's an important step for protecting the town. Next step will be building hardening standards. That's the R327 code drafted by the state. Because of the repeal of the fire hazard maps, we actually have the runway now to adopt that to apply to any new development in the city, regardless of the fire risk. And so that's slated for a work session on August 13th for the city council. I think this will be a little more streamlined because we're basically taking the R327 and adopting that. Of course, Deschutes County is involved in implementing that as our building code services and permitting and inspections. I think there is some work that still needs to be done about how cities do that, the process for adopting that and notifying and things like that. But as far as our ability to do that, regardless of the hazards on information, we're going to proceed. So that's next. And someday on the table will be, you know, continuing to work with defensible space in terms of expansions of existing properties and things like that, that we'll come back to council with. But as part of all this is communication, constant communication with the community, you know, explaining what the best practices are for existing properties. And, you know, we've been working with our fire department and all this work. We actually had a number of community meetings in May in community events for wildfire preparedness. You know, it was Wildfire Preparedness Month. We had a couple events with, you know, tabling and, you know, emergency preparedness information. Information about insurance, which we've talked about before being a big deal here. I think some of this code work that we're doing will hopefully help you know, in terms of future development. We had a panel, with all our fire partners, ODF and Citrus Fire and, you know, Forest Service, at a workshop here, last month to walk through a scenario of what happens when there's a wildfire in Citrus County and how do we respond and what's the city's role in that even. So, you know, a lot of work has been going on this year in terms of just get education, community outreach, and, you know, thanks for county's support and help with that, with emergency management, of course, and ECSO. So council, feel free to weigh in, but, I, you know, applaud the council for taking that on and getting these defensible space standards adopted. We just talked to the UGB, that's 250 acres that will have to comply with these new standards once they are annexed and, you know, have master plans that come in for development.
But yes, I want to compliment you all because I.
Can you please,
Yep.
I get both there.
Sorry. We'd like to hear that.
Oh, I'm sure you
The
do.
world's
It's like-
listening.
Thank you so much, because as I drive around this county, I get so nervous coming from Southern California and knowing what just happened in the Palisades. One of my friends died. My friend's husband would not leave that night because in their development, they only lost one home in the 93 fire. And this time, out of the 88 homes, there's only 25 standing. But I've been talking about a product. I see some wood fences still here. It's called Fire Coat number 100. It's from Universal Fire Products. And it actually saved my friend's house from burning down because you can coat your wood fences every 6 to 7 years, and it does work. So, and I do see some old wood fences in the town that need some help. So, and I also want to compliment you. Our numbers at the transfer station were outstanding for sisters. They were actually outstanding for the whole county, that everybody that cleaned up and dropped it off over there. So thank you. Brian was very busy there for a while.
Course. I think the experience of going through the code, it was laborious, right?
That'd be nice.
But we just plowed ahead, and I really thought that we had very thoughtful discussion. We didn't take it lightly, is what I'm saying. And I think we can pat ourselves on the back for that, and we're ready for the next round. Like Jordan said, the hardening code. And I'd like to hear about that, Patty, what you mentioned about the quick code. Because I'm thinking ahead, you know, we're talking about development code here, but at some point we've got to talk about municipal code. And how do you incentivize people and help people to convert their homes as much as possible and harden their homes as much as possible without that huge expense.
Right. This is for people that really can't afford to take out that wood fence. And you know your wood fence is not supposed to touch your house. It's supposed to be at least 5 feet from it. But let's say you have that situation, you really should do that 5 feet. But if you can coat it at least with this product, and then I had other people tell me that it is an amazing product. So, and I have a personal story. A couple of weeks ago, my husband didn't want to tell me for a week, but he didn't close the barbecue lid with briquettes. And I walked to the barn, came back, and I could smell smoke. Well, it was actually at the other side of our house. The fence, wood fence, was a bottom rail and a side rail that it were treated wood. They actually started burning. They were burning right next to my house. Here I am, like, you know, always so fire, you know, aware. And it stopped burning. But that was treated wood. And, you know, a week later he told me. So he was really scared to tell me. I don't blame him. I was like, we did what? You know, a briquette just, you know, in the wind, just like tonight, it took off and flew over to the fence. And fortunately, our house is hardy board, you know, that non-burnable concrete that looks like wood. You think you can put a nail in it, but you can't. So anyway, I tried.
I mean, that's such a great story. I mean, not great.
No,
story.
no, but it was.
So I mean, it just shows, you know, the importance of doing all these things because we're all human, right? Like just a little mistake like that, you know, can cause a lot of damage or misery, you know. So, you know, that's just kind of. I mean,
And we did have your husband come out. He did give me an analysis, which I really appreciated because it always gave me backup to pull some more trees out. And then the juniper bill is going to be funded. And for anybody in Sisters Country that has a insurance issue that needs to remove junipers, tomorrow there's a meeting at 10 a.m. I believe here in Sisters. And Soil and Water is gonna be here. You need to talk to Todd and get your name on the list. There's $585,000 to help with juniper removal in Deschutes County. So, yeah, there's 7 counties that will be impacted. Thank goodness we're going to get some decent amount of funding for juniper removal.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Yeah, because that's something that I think we've also been pushing, during the session in the state house is, funding streams to play into, what Cheryl was saying about, we don't want unfunded mandates, right? We want to be able to secure some funding or have some programs so that, especially when we kind of roll into the municipal code and, we have some tools and resources available for people, because for some people this is, financially or physically an impossible thing to do. So, we're aware of that and, kind of waiting to see what'll come out of the sausage grinder Salem in the next few days. If, that's certainly helpful to know. Another thing that we're doing in this process is that we're trying to also be an example. So we're going to be replacing some of our landscaping around City Hall and to make it more water wise, but also to show defensible space, what it looks like, and be a demonstration garden and signage, things like that. So, really trying to show the community, look, we're not asking you to do anything we're not doing. And, really want to be able to reach out and say, this is what it looks like, because, when you read it on paper, it sounds weird, it sounds a little scary, it sounds a little moonscape-ish or something. And so I think we're gonna, really try to show what it could look like and yeah, show people that we're walking the talk.
Last week in Bend, a homeland owners group had the HOA delivered bark to everybody's front yard. And as we all know, you should be using stone and not bark. So, then you're picking it all up, right? Because if it ignites, it will actually blow for a couple miles. I mean, that's how my hay burned up with Southern Cal. The ember came over the mountain and burned it up. It doesn't, it's really, bark is not a good thing there.
One last comment, but who's in Redmond? Because there's a friend who lives out on the edge of town, south side, where west where all the developments happen. And you drive by that development, there's probably 900 to 1,000 feet of beautiful brand new cedar wood fencing right along the road with all the tall vegetation sitting right up next to it. And it's like watching a line of gunpowder those cartoons heading up to the gunpowder tank. And you just, one spark and that stuff's all going up. And so we're still doing that even with the development, I guess is what I'm saying. That's why, we work so hard to ensure that when we build our new areas that are huge speed expansion, that we're not repeating those kinds of mistakes.
And I'd like to, really quick, we spent 9 months on the municipal space code, and I just want to thank staff for hanging in there with us as we were chewing through that. We kind of got close, and then we did another analysis and went through a whole another 3 months of it. But honestly, to get it right, sometimes it's just the way it is, and it took a long time, took a lot of meetings, and the city staff are phenomenal. We appreciate all the work they did. Hanging in there with us, even when it got frustrating on occasion.
Yeah, and we've been talking about copyright, other cities want to use it, but obviously we'd be happy to share that with other communities. I mean, I know the county has some code and the West Side Transact that you have, but the more the merrier stuff.
I just want to congratulate the city and express appreciation and thanks. You have modeled for all of our communities what the state of Oregon, we at Oregonians, we just looked this have failed to do last couple of years. Put in place defensible space and soon wildfire resiliency building material standards that are going to save people's homes from burning to the ground. Express how disappointed I am in what has happened in Salem last few months, and what a strategy. Show what you want to call the discussions around our funding. Like so far. Got the other funding bill turned into a, hey, let's put a tax on a nickel impact packages. That'll generate a couple million dollars when hundreds of millions of dollars to adequately fund both wildfire suppression and wildfire preparedness across the state in this plan. So what you've done is going to be incredibly important example to other communities around the state and what can be done to really help reduce the likelihood of losses. That one question I want to ask, from a policy perspective, in my mind, the real big picture is what can we do to actually make people's homes safer? And then how do we get the insurance industry to give credit when we're doing that? And so I'd be really curious whether what you've done in the city of Sisters is essentially adequate scale to be able to engage the insurance industry and some insurance, major insurance in the state of Oregon in those kinds of discussions, whether you can actually get them to say, oh, you've really done something here that's going to make the situation better. We need to go back to the drawing, the blackboard, and start factoring this into the way we think about premiums and cover it, and make coverage available in systems.
Let's say, planner Matt Martin behind you and I got to go over to Salem and see the IDHS demonstration burn that the fire marshal's office was hosting for anybody basically, where they kind of put a traditional shed next to a kind of fire hardened shed with bad landscaping, good landscaping, and set it on fire. And it was a little comical because it was a little cloudy and humid and cold, but they got the fire started eventually. And I did have a discussion with a couple of representatives from IDHS, the Institute for Insurance Business and Home Safety. Because we are, I think, the second state who's adopted their wildfire prepared home program, and that we have an agreement with the governor's office, the fire marshal's office with that, and that is, while that is a nonprofit funded by the insurance industry, they are kind of the best roadmap to get in front of insurers, to have a standard that insurers will recognize and acknowledge, and I was talking about our new code and saying, there's also a wildfire prepared neighborhood thing, and I have it wrong as well. So there's kind of these two standards that, they're saying, well, especially the new development, it's a really great chance to kind of develop around that neighborhood aspect of their research and what they're doing. So, and then we went over with a couple of members of our fire department as well. Because we have a lot of time in the car, especially because there was an accident on Tania. So
We shut down this.
we had a long lunch outside Salem, so it worked out. But got to discuss a lot of things, and while a lot of us didn't like the 762 map, there were other great things that came out of that bill, including they just received a brand new Type 3 fire engine, which a lot of fire districts did as well. A lot of fire apparatus has been distributed to fire districts across the state over the last couple of years, which is a huge boon to a lot of districts. Those are very expensive pieces of machinery, and their Type 3s are usually used in while they're in interface or forest fires, rain fires, things like that. So they're preparing our partners for that as well. So they're excited about that as well. And also, we do have a gentleman who's with the fire department, fire district here, who does home assessments. I mean, that's a large part of his job, and his funding comes out of that bill as well. And he's been fantastic. The district's been fantastic to work with. Really strong partnership. Obviously works across the street that, outside of Sisters, right, that, it's been going well. I mean, it could be better and faster and more effective, but, I'm really, really proud of the process.
Yeah, Commissioner Shane's comment about insurance, I met with a local insurance broker here in town. And we are down to 3 or 4 insurance carriers that will work in our city. 5 years ago, 12 to 15 carriers. Some good news though, in Sisters Country, we have over 20 neighborhoods that have been certified FireWise. And I have received confirmation that one insurance carrier is offering a discount to people in the neighborhood. So that's a positive thing. So, if we keep going down that track of the FireWise certification, and we can help our community more and more. I'm just so proud of these neighborhoods that have done this on their own. It's been great. So if we can keep going down that path, it might help with some of the insurance. Because as much as you can build affordable housing, if people can't afford to live in it, doesn't matter.
And I mean, just along the lines of the concept of a FireWise neighborhood, and what you've done in terms of standards for the municipal space and home marketing, that is going to get you to whole neighborhood wildfire resiliency. That I believe is what the insurance industries are going to really pick up, because fair point that many people make about the work that's being done. Have so many people that we're doing the work, doing great things in the property, and if their neighbor is not done the work, they are no better off than they were, or they invest all that in the network. So putting these standards in place will get you to, you and your neighbor and their neighbor, etc., all be in good shape. And that is what is going to address the house-to-house transmission of fire that insurance, I believe.
It's similar to the houselessness work that we're doing. I mean, it's gonna come from a lot of different strategies, right? It's gonna come from incentives for insurance with the Wildfire Prepared Home program, for example, or people just knowing I gotta make improvements in state. Sure. We talked about doing incentive programs that are like city grants and things too, for people who adopt these best practices on existing, developed properties in town. Campaign for education, communication, but also the acknowledgement of what the Forest Service has done in our area. If you look at those maps, right, we had that situation where U.S. forest land were moderate, and we were like scratching their heads, and actually we were looking for at the UTB area and we're high. And so we get that comment, well, why would you expand into the high risk areas? That's going to provide a protective ring in the city, because they are going to be building, defensible space. It's going to be building hardening standards. Going to have fire extinguisher or fire hydrants. And that can in turn kind of help insurance within this core of the city as well, as we work on all these other strategies. But nobody really knows what the insurance companies are thinking, where the data is coming from, and all that. But all these different pieces, I think, do add up. And I mean, as much as we like to complain about the smoke in May, all those controlled burns that were happening, as far as the safer program stuff in our area have helped, and they'll continue to help. We just need to continue to get that funded.
We do. Yeah, and unfortunately, one of the things that went under the axe in Salem this year, it seems like this legislative session, is funding for the forest restoration collaboratives, like including the Shoots Collaborative Forest Project, to help to plan the Sisters Area Fuels Reduction Project and many of the other projects in the south and the west of the City of Sisters that the Forest Service has implemented last decade that have helped to intercept the village fire, that been burning into the local sun.
The good news is Mariana Ruiz Temple, who is the head of part in Salem. Her parents actually live on Hurley Ranch Road, right down by me. And so I've been talking to her. There's a herd of 500 goats and Doppler sheep that are available in Terrebonne that can actually do cleanup. So they were just using them. I believe I saw in San Bernardino or somewhere, in Southern California, but they've been used by Bed Parks and Jefferson County And I've been asking, Mariana, if we could get some funding to, have them available for here. They could clear up a whole bunch. And they don't have any phone. Which I think is, we dealing with that. I was talking to a fireman last Wednesday night at the meeting at Terrebonne. He was talking about, they have this robot thing that they think is wonderful. So, where they actually, robots do the work. So they're working on getting some more of those. Together. Everything together.
Okay.
Or just
Very
to
good.
get the-
I know, you're the next item, right? Well, thanks, that was a great conversation.
Very
Yeah, Commissioner DeBoer, I think will talk to us about the 5-member commission.
Well, and we can all, we just had some updates on that today, so, 5-member commission. Is, well, I'm gonna talk about, districts for the 5-member commission, so that's the topic of the day. So the citizens voted to expand the board of commissions from 3 to 5, so let's see, there's 5 counselors, someday there'll be a match number of commissioners. But the districting process, we did talk about that today at our board meeting. It's on the meeting tonight. These are the things that really get people engaged. We're setting some dates. So the 21st of July is a Monday where the commissioner is going to start talking about who we'd like to see on this 7-person committee. And the goal is to land that Wednesday the 23rd. And then the memo, some of it's going to be from memory. I think about August 9th is going to be the first Tuesday night. And it could be 6 or 8 meetings or so around the county, different locations. So a committee is going to just look at the districting proposal, how it can come together. And we're also going to take some time as a board and kind of put input to what we're expecting to see from this committee, because it's a recommendation of the board. And the output of that is to put something on the ballot for the citizens to vote yes or no on. So we're all in this together, a few steps to get to that process. So with that, again, thoughts, Commissioner. You were.
I don't. Commissioner Chan, go ahead.
That's a little update on the process that create districts, but just on the basic question of expanding the board by members. It's important for everyone to understand ballot measure was passed last November. And there will be elections for these seats next year in 2026 at large. So all of this discussion of districting may affect whatever proposed districts in a ballot measure pass, may affect the 2028 commissioner elections, but the 2026 elections will be at large. That's how we will get from 3 to 5 initially.
And there will be 4 seats, but 2 of them will be 4-year terms, 2 will be 2 years.
The folks who wrote the ballot measure, because the board of commissioners would not refer the question directly to voters, so vote a ballot measure, gathered signatures out of the ballot and pass it as well. The folks who wrote the ballot measure, they specified that the 2 new seats would ultimately long-term run during the presidential election cycle. But we will have basically special elections to fill the remainder of a 4-year term next year. So those 2 new seats, people will be ready for a 2-year term, basically, then have to do it again in 2028 if they want to make same seats. And
Would they have to be in the district though, if it does pass? Or
if districts pass, and how you bring those 2 things together, 5 sitting commissioners with new districts, that'll be an interesting process to watch.
And the really interesting process is that Southern California, with its over 10 million people in LA County, has 5 supervisors, commissioners, and they clearly have districts. I looked at 30 years, and I don't think anything changed. Then we checked with San Bernardino, Riverside. They all have 5 supervisors that run their that run their counties. So it's, we're hoping to do a really transparent, clear job that the community all knows about for setting up those districts. It should be incredibly transparent. And hopefully the voters will approve it and they'll think, yeah, this is really, this is going to work for our community too. So.
May I ask, what are the kind of people you're looking for helping on that districting commission? Yeah, I mean, like, what kind of people are you? Is it gonna be like one from every?
So, there's been debate on this discussion in our board meetings, do we have a big process, do we have a big committee or a smaller committee? And we've kind of gone around a little bit on this. It was determined that the majority of the board supported smaller committee, so that's 2 assignments for Commissioner Dare and myself, 3 for Commissioner Chang, instead of getting it bigger. So at that point, today, we committed to, setting those dates or how we're going to kind of do this. We have some staff support. So then you can ask each of us individually, an elector in the district to put a fair map together as a recommendation to the Board of Commissioners that, will be voted on by the citizens. So after that, you can go partisan, you can talk about it all night long and we'll go from there.
And we did determine that we probably should each point have someone as an alternate, just in case, because we were talking about doing, from I believe September 9th until the 19th of November. So it's a 2-hour commitment every Tuesday, and what if something happens? So just to make sure that we have the continuity. But we have Nancy Blankenship has been part of the team with our administrator, and Neil Bryan, who prepared to be the facilitator. So I think we've selected some really, Nancy was our clerk for 19 years or something, incredibly, very well aware person of the growth and the values of Deschutes County.
Say that this is not the appointment process that I wanted, but as we move forward, what I would like to see within this committee, when it's proposed, is I would like to see geographic representation across the country. I would like to see, in terms of partisan affiliations, I would like to see an appropriate, proportionate representation of our community, including, that there will be someone to represent the 55,000 plus registered voters who are not Democrats or Republicans. According to city government, over 70% of the population of Deschutes County lives in the city. So I would like to see that reflected on this committee. That there's, more than half of the members of the committee actually are residents of the incorporated cities that can bring that perspective of city residents who are, as well as unincorporated county residents who are. And the question of how, I've been asked a couple of times for us to coordinate, on some level, coordinate. I don't know exactly what it looks like, so that we would get that all geographic representation with the proportional, partisan and urban rural representation in this committee. How we're going to do that is still clear.
Hey, what about you, ready to step in maybe?
I just wanted to recognize Jen Patterson, strategic initiatives.
She's helping us. Yes, there we go.
This process, and this has been a crash course in how to create districts, committees, guidelines for committees, everything under the sun. And just what a remarkable job she's doing, helping lead us through this process. Commissioner Dare mentioned Neil Wright and Nancy Blankenship. Our clerk is also involved in our GIS team. And of course, all with the support of county legal counsel. So it's a full team effort. I just want to recognize everybody that's involved. And I would just defer any logistical questions after this meeting to Jen, and she'll be able to answer those questions. Thank you.
Yeah, just thanking her for joining us today, please.
I'll say it occurs to me, looking at the discussion, not no surprises in any of it.
But I think that the balancing act for the three, and with the commission that gets created and the people that get appointed, is to be sure that the people that are there are ones who can craft something that will appeal to the voters. And you know what I'm talking about. Worst thing that would happen would be put it on the ballot and it doesn't go anywhere. Now you still got the problem of at large positions and trying to how you're going to handle that and everything else. So I think that I applaud the work that you're doing, and I hope that all of you are wise and pick good, wise people, because I think that's really what it's going to take, that everybody sees something in it for them, so that they can support it and we can move forward with the next iteration of the county commission.
Well, there's some people that don't want it, not in the past, so it's the same. And there's just the whole spectrum of opinions on this whole subject. And I mean, I wasn't even excited from going from 3 to 5, you know. Think about what is a county, what are the county services? The Board of Commissioners has the budget authority on the front end of the county, policy front end. So when we pick a position on something in Salem, it's the Board of Commissioners. But we have a bunch of other elected officials, you know, the sheriff, the district attorney, the assessor, the treasurer, the clerk, the justice of the peace. And then we go down solid waste and the road department and the fairgrounds. So I don't know what we're trying to fix here. And I still don't understand it. You know, when you talk to somebody, say, oh, I want my commissioner. Okay, well, that's why you voted yes. But what does that mean? What are we trying to fix? What's broken? Well, there's a Republican and there's a Democrat. Okay, I understand. But so I'm just pointing out, no, it's an interesting discussion to be had.
And almost 2 out of 3 voters in the November election said that they wanted to find a commissioner.
And as I said, as soon as I spoke to people, they're like, well, I thought we did districts because I voted for my commissioner. So that's a lot of people I spoke to.
It was crystal clear, but
We have a lot of crystal clear ones.
Yeah, didn't send us down this path. I think I would just say.
Oh, if you go,
Oh, no. I want to be clear what I mean, and that is that I think it's important that this is crafted well,
oh yeah,
so that voters can understand it. And I believe there are 3 people here who can do that and can appoint people that can do that.
Well, I thought
And don't disappoint me.
there you go. Thank you very much.
Gary,
Give our
I'll tell
marching
you
orders.
that Nancy Blankenship is incredibly highly respected. Nancy would never want to do something that was not the right thing. I mean, I've known her forever, and she is an amazing, I'm a citizen. She's coming back as a citizen. She was a clerk for 19 years. So we are really blessed to have her.
I'm glad to hear it.
Just quick follow-up question. So it sounds like there may be an opportunity for the committee to meet in Sisters as one of those 6 or 7 meetings. And then the appointment process is just a selection or appointment from each commissioner.
Yeah.
So it's not like an application or anything like that. It's just on the agenda on July 9th or.
The 21st and 23rd. So,
Okay.
yeah.
And the deadline for getting this on the ballot?
well, so that's it. As I say, this is a choice of the Board of Commissioners to put something on the ballot. We have that authority representing the people, because this could be done by petition also. So we're aiming for the May ballot this next year, and if it doesn't get there, we have the November ballot. We talked about the May ballot. So and that needs to be general by the end of the year to be put on, whatever the date.
But late February, but we're trying to make sure the board has the draft maps or the map, so that they can then make the decision for it.
Seems far away, but it's not.
Oh, I know, I feel like tomorrow.
Yeah.
So then along those lines, we have an announcement that the sheriff is retiring by the end of July. We're waiting for a date to, what's the term?
We're just finding.
Binding date for retirement. So that's tomorrow though. So, but we did talk about it at our board meeting today. So we started setting dates on that also, and we want people to put on a piece of paper that they want to be the sheriff. There's already lots of discussion happening in the community on this topic. So we'll have a meeting on those dates, the 21, 23, and then Tuesday, the 29th has already been scheduled. A special meeting of the Board of Commissioners. Probably going to be, this is just to put it on our calendar with the intention of appointing a new sheriff or, a sheriff who's going to be in that position for 15 or 16 months. 16, but yeah, so that, yeah, so.
Well, I do think that if we have 3 candidates in May, if any of those candidates, 3 or more candidates in May, Then in a May election, if any of those candidates emerges over 50% of the vote. The person who's serving as the interim chair could choose to step down, and then we could appoint whoever won the election to be the interim chair. Their four term begins in January. If I was serving in that interim role, I wouldn't want to be the kind of the seat warmer for the person who was just formally elected.
So, but yeah, it's the responsibility, serious responsibility, of the three of us, the board of commissioners, and we put a little bit of structure to that today too, to get appointment before the end of July. And then, yeah, you're talking about the next steps. So that's another real-time update.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
No.
Okay.
You do have.
What is that? You wanted to be shared?
Yeah, you do have to have a that law enforcement. And have been a resident of the Chiefs County Complaint. I thought middle school, isn't that? Well, I had that.
Fine.
Did you use a gun? That's your name. It's pretty some way you come.
All right, next up, we have the COIC update and Commissioner DePauw and Councilor Pellerin. Together separately?
Yeah, so I figured that's, we're seeing each other monthly at the Central Oregon Intergovernmental Council meeting, so and I think she took some notes about, what we've seen recently, but I can help them. And I think Commissioner Adair and Commissioner Chang have been involved with this over the years also. And a previous counselor here, her and I used to be with the COIC board. So any thoughts? I don't know.
Well, I was just gonna add that, so the June meeting, the $66 million budget was approved for COIC. That's down 8%. Because they're anticipating there's uncertainties with state and federal funding. 54% of that budget is for transportation, as you know, CET is under COIC. And then as far as funding, the funding that comes into COIC, 40% of that is coming from the state and 31% is coming from local government. Two direct impacts for our little city of Sisters in regards to COIC is we now have the mobile employment resource van here. Hopefully twice a month, we're trying to get on a regular schedule. So they come right out here and we're hoping that people will take that time to use those resources. We've had some employers contact Matt Olson, who's the employment counselor that runs the van, to share job openings that they have, which is good. So we're kind of getting a little bit here, but we want to see some residents and citizens hopefully utilize that as much as possible. And then CET is going to add a new bus stop at our new Gateway Transportation Hub Mobility Park.
Whatever, the official name.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that would be a new bus stop from CET. Of course, they've got all brand new buses and logos. They're revamping the whole marketing.
And they was easy for you to say.
Yeah.
So those dark gray vans have been ordered for many years. It's just kind of been a supply chain kind of backup, but all of a sudden they're starting coming in stuff that was funded like a biennium ago.
I think I was like,
exactly. So,
well, they're finally coming.
so they're dark gray, couple different sizes. The logo process it's funny because Bob Convent is the transit director. And he's kind of an engineer type. He said that was the most stressful thing he ever did. But getting down to it, we chose the round logo, the mountain peak with the road going up it, and the big choice was kind of the Oregon State orange is the one complementary color that could go in. It could be black and white or a gray logo, maybe other colors, but it was kind of complementary. Orange was the big thing. Well, we got that landed. That was a big deal.
Choosing art is not for everybody.
Yeah.
As we're learning there about yes.
I'm surprised you just love to yellow gun.
Well, yeah, it could happen to you. So the legislative session it's got the variables in that budget, so the best knowledge we have now is what we think is going to happen. We have some contingencies. So once this legislative session finishes, it'll be a little bit more clear. I think there's payroll dollars being proposed instead of 0.1, 0.3 now or something for payroll. So that And then that'll be split different ways, so we'll see what outcomes to our transit system, that's what we're in. Also being a qualified entity, counties that are qualified entity receive those dollars. COIC does the buses as the transportation provider, with kind of pass through. If COIC gets to be a qualified entity, it would still be a county saying, yes, there are qualified entities. Then we don't have to do paperwork acknowledging that they're doing the paperwork to receive the money. So it just reduces a little bit of layer of overhead.
To add to the conversation, I think the city of Sisters is really excited about the transportation hub and what it represents. And I really think that we're going to have some opportunities to coordinate more with CT and just have good connectivity transit-wise. I just think it's why it's there. It's not there just for show. We want to be able to use it. Maybe have some better connections over the mountains, stuff between cities, your city transit actually growing, and just getting a few cars off the road is never a bad thing, right?
So yeah, trying to get that transportation system before the choice rider, somebody that's grabbing their cup of coffee in a briefcase or a backpack, but whatever it is today, to get to work. And the hours have been expanded, also some more early and later rides, which help people get to different culture.
Yeah, I mean, I do just want to add your sense that all of this is in severe risk and peril. I've been on this for a time in the legislative session. They haven't landed the transportation. The payroll tax, which is the bedrock funding for our Cascades transit. There were proposals within this. There were proposals within this legislative session to make that go to zero for public transit, and that use it for something else. And there have been proposals to dial it up to 0.1% to 0.5%. So everything in between. But I've been tracking with fairly closely, setting up arrangements for the meetings. I think it's a good chance that we will by semi-die. 1.9.
Yeah. And I was talking to Bob Townsend with CET recently, and that question always comes up because it's the only bus service in the state that's on tap to transit district. And I was asking him his thoughts on that because he's been in the role for a while, right? And he was saying, so far, the payroll tax of the 0.1 has been funding them decently. And, if it was, I think you were saying at the time, it was proposed 0.2, so doubling it, but, very, very small amount, would basically negate the need to have a transit district, which I thought was really interesting because it was, he felt that would be enough funding. So it's kind of, it's one of those, things you have to weigh. I mean, a transit district is a heavy lift, for tax base and property taxes and everything that goes along with that. And there was this other mechanism that, he felt like, we didn't need to do that if we were sufficiently funded, and, obviously they're going to start using fares system. So, it was just an interesting conversation, interesting point he brought up, because I didn't realize how much of an impact that the whole thing from that had. And to, because otherwise, we were needed a district and
They're going to be able to keep the passes open if they don't pass the transportation open. I'm just wondering if they're keeping track of
Snow plowing is going to suffer potholes and basic quality of paving is going to suffer. The saddest thing about that is, as we all know, works departments do that little bit of work every year. It doesn't cost you that much to maintain the roads in quality, but if you just let it all go to crap, it costs a lot later on things. That is, I mean, there was a public survey done, and recently we said
Yeah, we don't think we need to raise our, you know, taxes and fees to do better road maintenance. Let it go. So, I think it's incredibly short-sighted. Yeah, but like, there's been a lot of incredibly short-sighted, perspective. The legislative system. And also, you know, it is a fiscally, it is fiscally challenging time with the revenue forecasts. When you have rosier revenue forecast that came in, you know, February, March, came down most recently. So people are anxious about that. And there's a tremendous amount of federal funding uncertainty. And so, you know, the state legislators are going to squirrel away money here and there to respond in case, you know, Medicaid gets gutted, something like that. So, you know, I don't, you know, I can express a lot of disappointment at the way that, you know, all these funding discussions are going. You can see, I also some different things like the transportation package and the wildfire funding and package that were intended to be general. Say, I am especially disappointed that people working get to the place that you to raise the revenue necessary to provide the relevant service and protection that or looking to.
Well, actually, I think you need to look back to the maintenance, the transportation bill in 2017. They only allocated 3% to maintenance. And I drive over so many potholes. I cannot believe it. How bad our roads are. And then you get out of our state, people like, what is it? Why are our roads? You know, we can say it's winter, but it's not really winter. It is, there's potholes everywhere. So if you look at that 3%, now I want to compliment, and I do this quite often, is Chris Doty, who runs Deschutes County Road System. I said, Chris, about 3 or 4 years ago, Chris, why don't you go and run ODOT? You have such, he's got a clear vision on how he runs. We keep our roads maintained. They're always at, let's say, 80%. So we don't have serious road issues like, you know, the county roads compared to the state roads. And really, they've got to go back and look at their home maintenance. They keep talking about shutting down Sisters. You know, Sisters is so much closer to the mountain. All the impact of stopping, you know, that 30 minutes when the mountain's getting slow, you know, stopped, just like what you had yesterday. We've got to be able to keep that mountain clear so that transportation, so trucks and everything can make it over. And yeah, but they, you know, Sisters, it may be going, I hope not. But it's, I've been on COIC, I've been the chair of COIC for our region 4 for quite a while, and I work with Bob. And I honestly, I really miss him. He wasn't kept by ODOT, and he knows our road systems better than anybody. So yes.
I would agree that some of the roots of the problems we're facing right now originated when House Bill 2017. It was that was our last transportation package. It was very big, and the way that they got a lot of people to vote for it was by putting a bunch of new capital and neglecting maintenance. So that's the intention right now with you know, this 2025 package is to fix that and give the attention to maintenance that's necessary, but without all those shiny swing special goodies for legislative districts, new capital projects. It's very hard to generate the votes necessary to get it done.
So back to those dark gray buses, we're going to be, we're working on a fare schedule. Seriously, you know, it went fair, that's zero cost to get on the bus during COVID. And it's just been that awkward time. It's like, how do you get back to charging a fare? Fare recovery is minimal, but it really, you know, shows the person that wants to be on the bus is the one that's investing at least $1 to get on the bus. And it'll be literally $1. So it's like a $2 charge and half off for underage and elderly. So I think it's something like that. There's a little bit of a chart associated with that. But just so you know, we're working on getting a fee schedule in place for that, and working with the transit advisory groups and the different communities on this also
So when will that start, where the fees are actually,
in fall.
Take the policy together. On fares and then it's fall. Yeah.
Curious, will that be cashless? In other words, electronic, so how do you? I'm just curious question. So for our, the house population, folks like that, would make life with us to get around. Some have cell phones, many have cell phones with the ability to do cashless. How will that be?
So I think it's gonna be a card system, and yeah, maybe there's an option to have a different device, but a card. And then as I say, if somebody, and we've all been in this spot, we just talked about the houseless situation. If somebody says, hey, I need some help, I need to get somewhere, you can just hand somebody a card. So it's not like it's gonna be a high barrier to get on the bus. But it's gonna be controlled, and one of the most valuable things is the fact that there's very disruptive people, so they end up with a do not let on the bus list, and this would be able to control that a little bit better too.
Okay, well, we have 2 more minutes for any other business or anything else that anybody wants to bring up. This has been a great conversation.
somebody asked me to bring something up.
Okay.
Okay, roundabout decorations are,
Sure.
are you guys taking it out to a vote? Are you guys deciding?
So that's gonna be in our first meeting in August, the first council meeting, we're gonna kind of review how we want to move forward. So that's where we're at right now.
So you'll make a decision in August. then?
Not on the artwork, just on the process.
Well, that's
Yeah,
the
yeah.
process, so that's, okay, all right, so.
Anything else? Well, I really appreciate everybody always making the trek up here. We have hosted you guys, so appreciate it and yeah, thanks for coming, and I'm gonna call this meeting adjourned, and we're gonna start our regular city council meeting at 6:30.
This meeting is.